欢迎继续收看佛学英文这一堂课。You are most welcome to this class of Buddhist English. Let's read a few sentences. Repeat after me. Like all virtues, generosity needs constant attention to flower and mature by regularly teaching a percentage of all your income to your point of inspiration. You can practice this in the most basic level, the material. The results of this will be immediately apparent in increased prosperity on all levels: finances, meditation, relationships, emotions. And soon the act of giving itself becomes an experience of prosperity. You can teach from personal income. It will totally change the way you view your world. It will open you to living more fruitfully and dynamically. While we should give generously to those that need help, it is important that our first teeth regularly goes to our places of spiritual inspiration. We must feed the fountain which nourishes our awakening wisdom. Where our teeth goes is a personal experience, something everyone must decide for himself. Teaching is putting your money where your mouth is. About generosity, Visakha was a generous lady, daughter of a millionaire, and the chief benefactress of the Buddha. She regularly gave alms and attended to the monks living in the monastery. One day, she went to visit the Buddha, covered in her most valuable jewels and ornaments. On the way, she decided her dress was inappropriate and gave all her adornments to her servant for safekeeping during the trip. After hearing the Buddha's discourse, Visakha returned home, accompanied by the servant, who had forgotten the jewels and left them at the gathering place in the monastery. Aranda, the Buddha's disciple and attendant, found the package and put it in a safe place for return to the lady. Repeat. Like all virtues, generosity needs constant attention to flower and mature by regularly teaching a percentage of all your income to your point of inspiration. You can practice this in the most basic level, the material. The results of this will be immediately apparent in increased prosperity on all levels: finances, meditation, relationships, emotions, and soon the act of giving itself becomes an experience of prosperity. You can teach from personal income. It will totally change the way you view your world. It will open you to living more fruitfully and dynamically. While we should give generously to those that need help, it is important that our first teeth regularly goes to our place of spiritual inspiration. We must feed the fountain which nourishes our awakening wisdom. Where our taste goes is a personal experience, something everyone must decide for himself. Teaching is putting your money where your mouth is about generosity. Visakha was a generous lady, daughter of a millionaire, and the chief benefactress of the Buddha. She regularly gave alms and attended to the monks living in the monastery. One day, she went to visit the Buddha, covered in her most valuable jewels and ornaments. On the way, she decided her dress was inappropriate and gave all her adornments to her servant for safekeeping during the trip. After hearing the Buddha's discourse, Visakha returned home, accompanied by the servant, who had forgotten the jewels and had left them at the gathering place in the monastery. Alanda, the Buddha's disciple, an attendant, found the package and put it in a safe place for return to the lady. In our last class, we have discussed about how to practice Buddha Dharma in our daily life. Because the practice of Buddha Dharma is aimed to live in a happy and a peaceful life. We must put into practice the Buddha Dharma in our daily lives. Otherwise, the Buddha Dharma is only a kind of knowledge, philosophy, and nothing beneficial to our living. We must show our love to our children and actually everybody, anytime, in order to make us happy and to make other people happy. We should not have hatred. We should follow the 5 precepts set down by our Lord Buddha. Buddha became Buddha just because of his practice of the precepts and the meditation and the wisdom. To love is not to possess anything. To love is to share what we have with other people. The ordinary people always try their best to gain whatever they can. The more they get, the more attached to they become. They are so miserable because they are afraid that their possessions will run away. And they will become poor again. They attach to the pure material so much that they are not free in their mind. Even if they have much wealth, they are not happy. Their mind is not peaceful. They cannot appreciate and enjoy what they have. Their possessions are only adornments to their physical body, they cannot appreciate their possessions. To practice Buddha Dharma is to purify our mind. The purification of our mind means that we can make conscious choice of what we eat, where we live, our friends, our clothes, and everything. When our mind is pure, then we are mindful and conscious. We can make the correct decision. We cannot follow our motivation or selfish desire to seek for our benefits only. We understand that we depend on other human beings, other living beings, other the whole world. We understand if we want to have a happy and a peaceful life, we must share what we have with other people. Therefore, we understand how to make the best choice in our life. Buddha is the best example of being a good person in the world, because the Buddha was the most compassionate person in the whole world. In his eyes, he had no enemy. He loved all people, all living beings, and even the whole world. Buddha was the most virtuous because Buddha observed very strict precepts. Therefore, he can practice meditation and cultivate his wisdom. Buddha was the most energetic because Buddha's mind is so pure. He didn't have liking or disliking. His mind could remain stable and peaceful. He was always energetic to do things beneficial to other human beings and other living beings. Buddha was the most intense because he had no craving, no hatred, no delusion, no suspicions, no doubt, no arrogance. His mind is totally open and free. He was not tense. Buddha was the most learned. Buddha was the best scholar we have in the history of humankind. He studied so many knowledge. He observed himself. He experienced himself. Therefore, he understands the truth and the relationship between the outside world and our mind. Buddha was the most courageous. Buddha had no fear at all. Buddha was totally enlightened. He was courageous to do the right things, to do the virtuous things. He had no enemy at all because he had the compassion, and wisdom. The compassion and wisdom are the best weapons to defeat the enemy. Buddha was the most courageous. Buddha was the most handsome. Buddha had no doubt, no fears. Buddha was so peaceful, serene, and happy. Therefore, he was the most handsome person in the whole world. Buddha was the most refined, not only in his appearance, physical body, behavior, but also in his mind. He is the most refined one. He had experienced the spiritual cultivation by himself. He followed the very strict discipline and practiced meditation all day long. He was so mindful. He had trained himself. He was the most refined. Buddha was the most prosperous. He had everything in his mind because he had nothing in his mind. He was so prosperous. His mind was totally free. His mind could learn, could take, could accept everything. He was the most prosperous. Buddha was the most respected. He respected all people, all different beings. He respected the environment, the nature, the world. Buddha was the most well-spoken. Buddha was enlightened. He could express the truths of life and the universe. He could give discourse to anybody of any background. He was the most well-spoken person in the history. His students came from different backgrounds. Buddha could teach them so well. Buddha was the most informed. Buddha understood the truths, the facts of the life and the universe. He was the most informed. He knew all the knowledges about life and universe. Buddha was the most intelligent. His intelligence came from his personal experience of spiritual training. He observed himself. He meditated for a long time and then understood the realities of his physical body and his mind. He expanded his knowledge to the external world. He could understand the inner world and outside world. He was the most intelligent. Buddha was the most loving person in the world. He loved every person, every living being, every natural, every environment, and even the whole world. He was the most loving person. Now we start to explain how to purify one's mind and to develop wisdom. Of course, there are many techniques in cultivation. Here, we want to mention one of the most important one and the basic one. That is the practice of generosity. Generosity is the number one prerequisite for progress on the spiritual paths. If we want to have progress on the spiritual paths, we should practice generosity. We should be generous to share what we have with other people. We should share our wealth, our materials, our wisdom, our love, our knowledge, our compassion with all the people, all the different beings. We should share what we love. In this way, we can purify our mind and make progress on the spiritual paths. Without joyful and a natural giving, there can be no receiving. If we want to practice generosity, we should be joyful and natural. We should not be proud. We should not be arrogant. We should be happy and natural in sharing what we have with other people. Otherwise, there can be no receiving. The reason for this simple generosity is the direct expression in action of non-attachment. If we can practice generosity, means we have less attachment. If we can share what we have, means that we have no attachment at all. The more we share, the less attachments we have. And the non-attachment is the key to freedom from suffering. We suffer because we attach to anything. The more we attach to, the more sufferings we will encounter. And actually, generosity is the direct expression of non-attachment. And the non-attachment is the key to freedom from suffering. Like all virtues, generosity needs constant attention to flower and mature by regularly teaching a percentage of all your income to your point of inspiration. You can practice this in the most basic level, the material. There are many virtues which we can practice. Generosity is one of the virtues we, the Buddhists, should practice. Just like all other virtues, generosity needs constant attention to flower and mature. By regularly teaching a percentage of all your income to your point of inspiration, you can practice this in the most basic level, the material. We should regularly practice generosity. We should flower and mature the virtue of generosity by regularly sharing what we have with other people. We can share a certain percentage of our income. We can start the practice of generosity from the very basic level. That means the material. Material is outside our physical body. We can practice the generosity by giving the material with other people. And later on, we can practice generosity by giving our knowledge, our wisdom, our love to other people. The results of this will be immediately apparent in increased prosperity on all levels. It is just like an investment. The more you share with other people, the more you will receive from other people. Because when you share what you have with other people, you can produce better personal relationships. You can produce good images in other people. Therefore, you can experience the increased prosperity on all levels: finances, meditation, relationships, and emotions. It will apparently increase your income. It will improve your meditation. It will improve your personal relationships. It will improve your emotions. Because when you practice generosity, you are practicing non-attachment. If you don't attach to anything, then everything will be fine to you. Your mind will be purified. And soon the act of giving itself becomes an experience of generosity, of prosperity. In a very short time, the act of generosity itself becomes an experience of prosperity. Giving will bring prosperity to you in terms of material and spirit. The more you give, the more you will obtain on the levels of spiritual cultivation and material income. You can teach from personal income. It will totally change the way you view your world. It will open you to living more fruitfully and dynamically. You can spare certain portion of your income. If you can save some money and give it to other people, then the way you view your world will totally change. It is because that you love the world. You will have no enemy. You will have less attachments. It will open you to live more fruitfully and dynamically. You will live more flexibly and energetically because you are eager to share what you have with other people. You are eager to help other people You understand the conditions. You understand what other people need. You understand when you give, you will receive more. You will not lose anything. While we should give generosity to those that need help, it is important that our first tears regularly goes to our place of spiritual inspiration. When we want to practice generosity, we should bear in mind that it is for the benefit of our spiritual inspiration. We shall not to wait for return. We shall just for the practice of non-attachment. We should not cling to the action of generosity. Otherwise, we will become unfree. We must use the generosity to practice, to reduce our attachment. We must feed the fountain which nourishes our awakening wisdom. We must cultivate our wisdom through the practice of generosity. It is only to make progress on our spiritual path, not for ours, not for the return of other people. While our teeth goes is a personal experience, something everyone must decide for himself. We must decide where we will give our generosity. We must decide where to donate. Of course, we should donate to the right person, the right organization, the right receiver, and the right place. We should understand clearly what is the right generosity. We should use our wisdom to share our materials and the wisdom and the love and everything with other people. Otherwise, we will spoil the receivers. Teaching is putting your money where your mouth is about generosity. To spare a person of our income is to put into practice our teaching on generosity. Only talking is of no use to the progress of our spiritual cultivation. We must take action. The action should be taken from the very basic level. We must start the practice of generosity from material. Otherwise, our mind is still clouded by desire, hatred, and delusion. Of course, in the history of Buddhism, there are many examples of the donors who supported Buddhism. Here, we want to take the Lady Visakha as a good example to explain how to practice generosity. Visakha was a very generous lady, daughter of a millionaire, and the chief benefactress of the Buddha. According to the Vinaya, Visakha was a very generous lady. She was so generous to share what she had with the Buddha, the monks, and the people. He was a very generous lady. He was the daughter of a millionaire. Of course, she was the daughter of a millionaire. Otherwise, she could not share her wealth with other people. Buddha had many benefactors and benefactresses. Visakha was the chief benefactress of the Buddha. Visakha supported the Buddha the most. She donated the most to the Buddha and supported the Buddha in building materials, in building temples, monasteries, in supporting the Buddha's disciples, and in spreading the Dharma to all the people. She was the chief benefactress of the Buddha. Of course, there are other benefactors, but Visakha was the chief one. She regularly gave her alms and attended to the monks living in the monastery. She regularly donated to the monks and took care of the monks living in the monastery. One day, she went to visit the Buddha, covered in her most valuable jewels and ornaments. One day, as in other normal days, she went to visit the Buddha, and she dressed her best. She covered herself in her most valuable jewels and ornaments. She was the daughter of a millionaire. She could have whatever she wanted. She dressed herself. She covered herself the most valuable jewels and ornaments. However, on the way, she decided her dress was inappropriate and gave all her adornments to her servant for safekeeping during the trip. On the way, Visakha thought that it was inappropriate to wear jewels and beautiful ornaments to visit the Buddha, because Buddha was a practitioner. Buddha was a monk. It is not proper to see a monk with beautiful jewels and ornaments. She decided that her dress was inappropriate. So she changed her jewels and ornaments. She took off her valuables and asked her servant to keep the jewels and ornaments safely during the trip. She had a servant, of course. She asked the servant to take good care of her jewels and ornaments during the trip to visit the Buddha. She believed that she should dress in the simple way. She should wear the simple clothes to see the Buddha. After hearing the Buddha's discourse, Visakha returned home, accompanied by the servant, who had forgotten the jewels and had left them at the gathering place in the monastery. Visakha went to visit the Buddha. At the very beginning, she dressed in her most valuable jewels and ornaments. However, on the way, she thought that it was inappropriate to see the Buddha with ornaments and jewels, so she took off the jewels and ornaments and asked her servant to take care of it. When she visited the Buddha gave discourse to her. Buddha was a good teacher. He always gave teachings to the visitors. The visitors went to see him for advices in life, in every aspect. After hearing the Buddha's teaching, Visakha returned home, accompanied by the servant. Of course, a house lady should return home after listening to the discourse given by the Buddha. It is not proper for a house lady to live in the temple where monks live. After hearing the Buddha's discourse, Visakha returned home. Her servant accompanied her. Her servant always was on her side to tend to her. Her servant was always within the reach of Visakha in order to take good care of Visakha. Therefore, after the Buddha's discourse, Visakha returned home, accompanied by her servant. Here is the story. The servant had forgotten the jewels and ornaments and left them at the gathering place in the monastery. Maybe the servant was unmindful. The servant didn't practice the meditation of mindfulness. And it is quite usual that we forget something. We may leave anything. We may forget to bring back everything we bring with us. The servant had forgotten the jewels and had left the jewels and ornaments at the gathering place in the monastery. A monastery is a complex. A monastery is a large area. A monastery has multi-purposes. A monastery may have the different quarters of the monks, the meditation room, the preset hall, or the place to worship and to perform rituals. A monastery is a big complex where many monks live. And we should understand that usually in a monastery there is a gathering place for the visitors. The outside visitors come to the gathering place and meet the monks of the monastery. They receive the teachings at the gathering place. Lay people cannot go into the living quarters of the monks. They should gather at the gathering place where they can meet the monks and receive the teaching. When Visakha returned home accompanied by her servant had forgotten the jewels and ornaments and left them at the gathering place of the monastery. Of course, on the way to visit the Buddha, Visakha had already asked her servant to pack the jewels and ornaments in order to keep safety. So, the servant had left the package at the gathering place in the monastery. Alanda, the Buddha's disciple and attendant, found the package and put it in a safe place for return to the lady. The Buddha had many disciples. As we often read from the sutra, the Buddhas had 1,000 250 disciples, always with him. Among those disciples, there were chief disciples. Among the chief disciples, there was one important disciple and a personal attendant. His name is Ananda. Ananda was the Buddha's cousin, who always followed the Buddha and took care of the Buddha. Ananda was always on the Buddha's side. He found the package and put it in a safe place for return to the Buddha. Ananda was a monk. He found the package. He didn't take the package to himself. He put it in a safe place. He wanted to return the package to the Lady Visakha. A monk is honest. A monk is not craving for wealth. Therefore, Ananda waited Visakha to take the package back. Thank you for your joining. We'll continue the story of Visakha next time. Thank you.